It was the kind of calm morning people write songs about birds chirping, the sun casting a golden glow across driveways, and the breeze gently brushing against flower beds. I stood in the kitchen, sipping my first cup of coffee, when a flash of movement caught my eye through the window. My neighbor Mildred was creeping across her pristine lawn, moving with all the subtlety of a cat burglar in broad daylight. Her oversized sunglasses and designer gardening gloves made her look like she was headed to a red carpet event at the Pentagon. In her hand, a clipboard and a suspiciously shiny golden tool, what looked like a screwdriver from a luxury home repair set. Mildred crouched beside my old red pickup truck, inspecting the handle with hawk-like precision, muttering to herself, as if she were disarming a nuclear device. That truck wasn't just any vehicle, it was my late brother Jake's mobile workshop, a rolling symbol of resilience, memory, and personal history. And now, apparently, it had become enemy number one in the HOA's list of suburban atrocities. But before we get to the part where things spiral out of control, let me take you back to where it started. My name's Ben Carter. I'm 35 years old, a signal analysis specialist by trade. I work for the local aviation museum, where I maintain and modernize radio communication systems for vintage aircraft. It's not glamorous, but it's important, and honestly, I love it. There's something calming about giving these relics of the past a voice again. When my older brother Jake passed away last year in a tragic accident, I inherited more than just his tools and old gear. I inherited his red 1987 pickup. The paint had long since faded, the chrome was weathered, and the interior smelled like solder and old leather. But inside that truck were his fingerprints, metaphorically and literally. Every dial and switch had a purpose. Every antenna was hand-tuned for testing frequencies in remote locations. It wasn't just a truck. It was Jake's legacy, his story, and, in a way, the last part of him I still had. Jake had served in military communications for over a decade before switching to civilian radio systems. He was brilliant, quiet, and obsessed with precision. During his weekend visits, we'd work on signal tests, upgrade rigs, and discuss obscure frequencies over beers and takeout. The truck had become our lab, our getaway, and eventually, my moving memorial. I couldn't bring myself to keep it in a garage. It needed to run, needed to be seen, needed to breathe. So, when I moved into this suburban neighborhood 6 months ago, I parked it proudly in my driveway. No rust, no oil leaks, and all equipment safely mounted and stowed. I even polished it once a week out of respect for Jake. I didn't expect to be welcomed with open arms, but I never imagined that an old red truck would spark a suburban Cold War. The first time I met Mildred was a Tuesday. I remember it clearly because I had just finished unloading some delicate radio test equipment when she walked up my driveway as if she owned the block. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she chirped, all teeth and gloss. "I'm Mildred, HOA board coordinator." Her tone was sugary, but there was a tension in her smile, like a corporate manager about to fire someone with a coffee mug that says, "Hang in there." She held her clipboard like it was a badge of honor. "I just wanted to ensure you've had a chance to review our community standards," she said, flipping a tabbed section to a page I couldn't see. I extended my hand, which she glanced at but didn't shake. Instead, she gestured grandly toward the truck. "That vehicle doesn't quite match our aesthetic guidelines," she said, voice lowering slightly, "but I'm sure we can work something out." There it was, the threat disguised as compromise. I'd dealt with their type before, power-hungry bureaucrats who wield rules like weapons and clipboards like swords. Still, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. "This truck was my brother's," I said. "It's part of my work now. I use it for testing aviation comms systems." She blinked slowly behind her designer shades. "Well," she said with a plastic smile, "it just stands out. We like a uniform look here. Neat, clean, cohesive." I nodded, non-committal. She left without shaking my hand or giving a formal goodbye. Just turned and walked away, scribbling something onto her clipboard. I should have known then that Mildred wasn't going to let this go. Within days, she began stopping by uninvited, sometimes just standing on the sidewalk, arms crossed, staring at the truck like it had insulted her ancestry. She'd take photos from multiple angles, sometimes with flash, even in daylight. During one such drive-by, she brought a measuring tape. I stood on my porch, coffee in hand, watching as she measured the truck's length, the distance from the curb, and even the diameter of the antenna. She noted everything, occasionally glancing at me with a smug little smirk. Then came the HOA letter, printed on thick cardstock. It had the formality of a cease and desist notice. It demanded I remove the non-compliant vehicle within 7 hours or face fines and potential towing. It cited obscure regulations about commercial-looking equipment, color uniformity, and aesthetic harmony. The kicker, all of it was based on guidelines, not enforceable laws. Guidelines. I reread the letter 3 times, alternating between disbelief and fury. Was this what Jake's memory was going to be reduced to? Someone's idea of visual pollution? I walked outside, letter still in hand, and found Mildred standing across the street on her lawn. Phone raised, snapping another photo. Our eyes met, she smiled. We'll just see about that, she said the next morning. The tire was flat. Not low, not leaking flat. I knew tires. This wasn't from a nail on the road. The puncture was deep, deliberate, and right in the side, where no accidental damage could happen. I knelt beside the wheel, breathing hard, eyes darting toward Mildred's window. Her blinds twitched. Of course they did, as I swapped the tire with my spare. I could feel her watching. Not just watching, judging, documenting, hoping I'd give up and tow the truck away. But all it did was fuel something inside me. Something I hadn't felt since Jake's funeral. Resolved. I tightened the last lug nut and stood, staring across the lawn. If she wanted a fight, I wasn't going to back down. I didn't want to escalate things the way she had. Petty sabotage and social sabotage. I knew better. I had experience, real experience. That's when I thought of Daniel. Daniel and I had worked together during a government contract in satellite signal redundancy. He was brilliant, a little eccentric, and after leaving the defense world, transitioned into prop design for science, documentaries. If anyone could help me send a message with precision and flair, it was Daniel. I called him that night. Sounds like a mission, he said. I've got gear from that old NASA project, mock signal boosters, a dummy transceiver rack, even some thermal indicators with blinking LEDs. He paused. You want to make this thing look like something out of a DARPA vault? Exactly. We both laughed. It felt good. For the first time since this mess started, I felt in control again. Mildred's next move wasn't just bureaucratic, it was psychological warfare. Whispers began to float around the neighborhood like smoke signals. Ben overheard snippets at the mailbox, in the park, and even during a quick grocery run. Know that guy on Juniper Lane? The one with the red truck? I heard it emits radiation. Someone said it's got spy equipment inside. He might be monitoring people. My kids aren't even allowed to bike past his driveway anymore. The source of all this nonsense, Mildred, of course. She had begun a stealth campaign, planting seeds of doubt among concerned neighbors. Her story evolved with every retelling. Sometimes Ben was a rogue radio operator. Other times he was a disgraced military contractor. Once, she claimed loud enough for Ben to hear that the truck could be listening to phone calls. Ben tried to laugh it off, but the smiles he used to get from neighbors were now replaced with uneasy nods or averted eyes. He wasn't just the man with the red truck anymore. He was the subject of a suburban ghost story. The next Thursday morning, Ben woke up early to take his trash cans out. He opened the door and paused out to enormous city-issued bins blocked his driveway completely, reeking of rotting meat and sour milk. Mildred's bins. She had placed them perfectly in front of his driveway, angled just enough to imply it was a mistake. Her own cans were neatly out front as if nothing had happened. Ben rolled his eyes. He moved the bins carefully, made sure they were empty. Of course they weren't. He had to scrub his driveway after disposing of a leaking bag that had burst during the relocation. That afternoon, Mildred posted in the neighborhood Facebook group, "Please be mindful of where your trash bins go on collection day. Some residents are abusing the curb space. Just trying to keep things neighborly." The passive aggressiveness was weaponized. Her message wasn't a warning. It was bait. Ben didn't respond, but he started documenting everything from photos of the bins to timestamps of when she moved them by the end of the week. A new development appeared in Mildred's front lawn, a sign, neatly mounted, printed professionally. Visual pollution alert with a bold red arrow pointing directly at Ben's truck. The next morning, 3 more signs popped up, one across the street, another at the end of the block, and one suspiciously close to the local elementary school carpool loop. Each sign featured variations of the same theme. Eyesores equals lower property value as your family safe. Say no to illegal surveillance. Ben stared at them in disbelief. They looked official, almost like part of a city campaign. But closer inspection revealed tiny print at the bottom. Sponsored by concerned citizens of Juniper Lane, a group that didn't exist until now. He printed his own sign, set it in his yard, and let it speak volumes. Greater than this truck belonged to my late brother, Jake Cardew's Army Signal Corps. It stays. The sign went viral in the local Facebook group. Dozens of neighbors began to comment. Some backed Mildred, but others started defending Ben. The tide was shifting. Ben called Daniel that night. They hadn't spoken in over a year, but Daniel picked up on the first ring, still attracting trouble like a lightning rod. "Carter, you wouldn't believe me if I told you." Daniel listened, intrigued. He'd always loved chaos. A former R&D engineer turned Hollywood prop designer, Daniel had an eye for theatrical overkill. "What do you need?" Daniel asked. "Something to make her paranoid dreams come true. I want her to believe I'm hiding a time machine in the bed of that truck." Daniel cackled. "I've got just the thing." 3 days later, a heavy-duty box arrived on Ben's porch. Inside was a collection of absurd but realistic-looking equipment. Blinking antenna arrays, a rotating radar dish, and a glowing orb, labeled Quantum Field Emulator. Ben spent the weekend subtly mounting the devices onto the truck. By Sunday evening, the red pickup looked like it belonged in a NASA lab. Mildred lost her mind. The moment she saw the new attachments, she took 20 pictures. Then she held an emergency HOA meeting. No notice, no agenda, just fury. The meeting, normally held in the rec room, spilled into the parking lot as she waved printed screenshots and ranted about electromagnetic terrorism. She accused Ben of building a tracking center and claimed he was violating dozens of but, when pressed to cite actual rule violations, she flailed. One board member, an older gentleman named Curtis, spoke up. "Mildred, it's a truck, it's parked legally, and Ben hasn't responded to any of your nonsense with anything but politeness. Maybe back off." Mildred shrieked, "He's mocking me. That's not a truck, that's a government weapon." Curtis replied, dry as dust, "Then maybe it'll vaporize your lawn signs and we can all sleep in peace." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Mildred's face went crimson. She stormed off, but the damage was done. Ben had won the room and he hadn't even spoken. The witch hunt had backfired. Ben didn't just want to win, he wanted Mildred to feel the weight of her own paranoia. With Daniel's help, he built what looked like a mobile command and surveillance unit out of his truck. None of it was active, of course it was all for show, but the brilliance was in the details. Daniel mailed him a crate full of prop equipment, fake satellite upblinks, blinking lights, reinforced panels that magnetically locked onto the truck bed, and several official-looking hazard decals. Ben stuck a large magnetic sign on the door that read, "Aerospace Field Testing, UNIT, no trespassing" in black and yellow font. He even mounted a motion-activated light on the back that word when it turned. Neighbors stared, children pointed, but Mildred lost her mind. The day after the truck transformation, she marched down the sidewalk like a commander inspecting enemy defenses. When the motion light clicked on as she got too close, she shrieked and dropped her clipboard. Her hands shook. Her eyes darted to the antenna array on the roof and the blinking red LED on the fake satellite panel. That night, Ben caught her peeking out from behind her blinds with binoculars. By week 2, the entire neighborhood was talking. Some were amused, others confused, but many began to see through Mildred's obsession. Ben, ever calm and courteous, didn't engage. He mowed his lawn, waved to neighbors, and kept the truck spotless. When one neighbor asked what he did for a living, Ben smiled and said, "I used to work on signal processing for airfields. Now I just do display maintenance at the museum downtown." That answer only made the rumors wilder. One family swore they saw someone in a black SUV, taking photos of the truck at 2 a.m. Another claimed a drone hovered over the neighborhood for 30 minutes, likely one of Daniel's pranks. And yet, all signs pointed back to Mildred as the one fanning the flames. She printed flyers, accusing Ben of housing experimental broadcast equipment, and warned parents to keep children indoors. She shouted down board members who questioned her behavior and demanded a special HOA session to ban tactical-style vehicles. But the tide had shifted. Her flyers ended up in recycling bins. Her special meeting had 3 attendees. A new neighborhood group began forming online. Keep Pine Oaks Sane. In its first post, a photo of Mildred mid-rant next to Ben's pristine truck, with the caption, "Karen's Radiation Meltdown." On a Friday morning, Ben reviewed footage from his driveway cam, expecting more trash bin games or late-night spying. What he found sent his jaw to the floor. 2:42 a.m., Mildred crept onto his driveway, wearing gloves, crouched low. She looked around nervously, then slowly approached the passenger side of the truck. From her purse, she pulled a gold-handled flathead screwdriver. Ben watched in disbelief. As she tried to wedge the tip into the door seam, he saved the footage and made 3 copies, one for himself, one for his lawyer, and one on a flash drive, labeled insurance, hidden in his air vent. Then he called Daniel. "She tried to break into the truck," Ben said flatly. Daniel whistled. "Tell me you caught it on camera." "Crystal clear. I've got 4 angles." The next morning, Ben did not call the police. He printed stills from the footage and quietly mailed them to every HOA board member with no return address. Just a sticky note that read, "Might want to reconsider who's enforcing the rules." By Monday, the fallout was in full swing. Next official HOA meeting was standing room only. The board members looked pale and stiff. Mildred walked in with her usual flare hair, perfectly curled, heels clacking on tile, clipboard in hand. The board president stood. "Before we begin," she said, "we need to address a serious breach of ethics and conduct. Ms. Barrett, please take a seat." Mildred blinked, stunned. "We've received verified evidence of attempted trespassing and vehicle tampering. You are being suspended pending investigation. We've also called for a vote to formally remove you from the HOA board." Mildred opened her mouth to speak, but the president cut her off. "Please, sit down." The vote passed 9-0. Mildred stormed out, red-faced and humiliated. Neighbors clapped. Some whispered, others laughed. A few gave Ben a nod across the room. He didn't need to say a word. The next morning, the lawn signs were gone. The trash bins were moved, and Mildred's blinds remained shut for days. Weeks passed. The red truck remained unchanged, a symbol of quiet defiance and legacy. Ben added a small magnetic plaque below the aerospace unit sign that read, "In memory of SGT, Jake Carter, U.S. Signal Corps." One neighbor, a former Marine, walked over with a salute. "Wish I'd met your brother," he said. "Yeah," Ben said with a soft smile. He'd have had a field day with all this. The neighborhood calmed down. The board reviewed and updated its vehicle bylaws, removing vague language and limiting unilateral enforcement powers. A new community newsletter featured a story titled, "Understanding Our Neighbors. Meet Ben Carter," where Ben shared Jake's story and explained his role at the museum. Daniel visited one weekend and stood by the truck, beaming. "I told you," he said, "no one defeats the red truck." Ben laughed. No one. By spring, Mildred's house had a for sale sign. Whispers said she was moving to a gated community in Florida. Ben stayed. And so did Jake Atlease. In spirit,